Let me begin with something that sounds impossible. Imagine you pour a sidewalk today. You wait a few days, it becomes hard. You walk on it. A month later, it's solid. A year later, it's solid. 10 years later, it's still solid. But 2,000 years later, still changing, still reacting, still hardening. That sounds like a magic trick. It sounds like a story you tell children. But it isn't a story. It's a fact hiding in plain sight, sitting under our feet, holding up bridges, dams, skyscrapers, and ancient ruins. Concrete is not dead. It is not finished. It is still busy. And if that doesn't make you curious, it should. Because we tend to believe something very simple. When something becomes solid, it's done. Finished. Over. The story has ended. But nature rarely works that way. Think about a loaf of bread. You take it out of the oven, it looks done. But if you cut it too quickly, steam escapes. The inside is still adjusting, still redistributing heat, still settling. Concrete is like that, except instead of minutes, it takes centuries. Let's go back in time for a moment. Walk with me to ancient Rome. Not the Rome of postcards, but the Rome of builders. The Rome of engineers who didn't have computers, didn't have modern chemistry textbooks, didn't have satellite imaging, but built structures that still stand. Consider the Pantheon in Rome. That dome has been standing for almost 2,000 years. No steel reinforcement bars inside, no modern additives, just stone, volcanic ash, lime, water, and patience. Patience on a scale we barely comprehend. Or look at the Colosseum. Earthquakes have shaken it. Empires have fallen around it. And yet the material itself is still evolving at the microscopic level. You see, when we say concrete dries, we're already making a mistake. It doesn't dry the way mud dries. When mud dries, water evaporates, it leaves. The material shrinks, it cracks. Concrete doesn't simply lose water. It reacts with water. That's a completely different story. Imagine you have a pile of tiny invisible puzzle pieces. Cement powder is like that. Millions upon millions of microscopic fragments, each ready to link arms. When you add water, it's not just getting wet. It's starting a dance. Water slips into the structure. It breaks some bonds. It creates new ones. It allows tiny crystals to grow, interlock, and form a rigid network. It's more like growing coral than drying clay. The water becomes part of the structure. It's not just a temporary guest, it's a participant. And here's the strange part. Not all of the cement reacts at once. Some particles remain untouched for years. Years, decades, centuries. Like seeds in dry soil waiting for rain. In Roman concrete, something even more interesting happens. The Romans mixed volcanic ash with lime and seawater. That volcanic ash contains special minerals that slowly react over very long timescales. When cracks form, and cracks always form, seawater seeps in. And instead of destroying the structure, it triggers new crystal growth inside the crack. It heals itself. It's like a bone repairing after a fracture. Modern researchers studying Roman harbor structures found that instead of weakening over time, some of these structures became stronger. Stronger after centuries of waves crashing against them. Now pause for a moment. What kind of material gets stronger when attacked? That's not how we think about the world. We think damage means decay. We think time means erosion. But here is a material that seems to use time as an ally. It's almost philosophical, isn't it? We often think of time as the enemy. We say time destroys everything. We see rust, rot, decay. But concrete whispers a different message. Sometimes time builds. Sometimes time strengthens. Now, when people say Feynman was right, they're not referring to a specific quote about Roman concrete. They're referring to a spirit, the spirit of curiosity. The spirit of looking at something ordinary and asking, what is really happening here? Richard Feynman loved that. He would look at a wobbling plate in a cafeteria and wonder why it moved the way it did. He would look at a flower and not only see beauty, but see atoms dancing. Concrete is like that wobbling plate. It looks dull, gray, lifeless. But zoom in far enough and it's a universe of slow-motion fireworks. Tiny crystals growing like frost spreading across a window. Bonds rearranging, voids filling, stress redistributing. And it doesn't happen in seconds. It happens in geological time. 2,000 years is a blink for a mountain. But for human civilization, it's enormous. The idea that something we mixed with water and poured into a wooden mold can still be chemically active after the rise and fall of empires. That should humble us. It tells us something profound. We often imagine that once we understand something, we control it. But the Romans didn't fully understand what they had made. They knew it worked. They knew their harbors lasted. But they didn't have electron microscopes. They didn't know about crystal lattices. And yet, by careful observation and trial and error, they created a material that outperformed many modern concretes in certain environments. That should make us pause. How many things around us are still quietly evolving, long after we've stopped paying attention? Think about your own life. You learn something at 20. You think you understand it. But decades later, it's still reacting inside you. Ideas mix with new experiences. Beliefs harden, soften, rearrange. We are a bit like concrete. Not finished at 25, not finished at 40, still curing, still adjusting, still strengthening in some places, cracking in others. And when cracks appear, what happens? In poor concrete, cracks let in water and salt which corrode steel reinforcement. The structure weakens. But in Roman marine concrete, cracks triggered new mineral growth. The crack was not the end. It was the beginning of a new reaction. That's a lesson hidden in stone. Now, I don't want to romanticize everything. Not all concrete gets stronger forever. Modern concrete can deteriorate. Freeze-thaw cycles can break it apart. Salt can corrode embedded steel. Chemistry can attack it. Nature is not sentimental. But the underlying idea remains powerful. Materials are processes, not objects. We think of a bridge as a thing, a static thing. But in reality, it is a slow-motion event. Molecules shifting, stresses flowing. Heat expanding and contracting. Moisture migrating. It's like a frozen waterfall. It looks still, but if you wait long enough, you see the flow. So what exactly is happening inside ancient concrete after 2,000 years? Very slowly, unreacted particles continue to meet water. Very slowly, new crista, LS form in microscopic pores. Very slowly, the internal structure becomes denser. It's not dramatic, you won't hear it. You won't see it. But if you could shrink yourself to the size of a grain of dust and live for centuries, you would watch landscapes forming and reforming inside that gray mass. It would look alive. And that word, alive, is interesting. Concrete isn't alive in the biological sense. It doesn't reproduce. It doesn't metabolize. But it does evolve. It responds to its environment. It changes with time. Where exactly do we draw the line between living and non-living processes? A crystal grows. Is that alive? A snowflake forms intricate patterns. Is that alive? Life is a special arrangement of matter, but the underlying rules, atoms bonding, breaking, rearranging, are universal. When you look at concrete hardening for 2,000 years, you're looking at patience built into physics itself. The laws of nature don't rush. They don't say, well, it's been a week, let's wrap this up. They proceed at whatever pace the conditions allow. Temperature matters, moisture matters, composition matters. Change those variables and you change the story. This is another lesson. Small differences in ingredients can lead to massive differences over time. The Romans used volcanic ash from regions around places like the Bay of Naples. That ash had special chemistry. It interacted with lime and seawater to create rare minerals that lock structures together more tightly over centuries. Modern concrete often prioritizes speed. We want it to set quickly. We want projects finished fast. We optimize for days and months, not centuries. That's a reflection of our culture, not just our chemistry. What if we built with a 2,000-year mindset? How would our cities look? How would our decisions change? If you knew a structure would still be evolving when your great-great-great-grandchildren walked beneath it, would you choose different materials, different designs? Concrete becomes a mirror. It reflects our relationship with time. And here's something even more mind-expanding. The atoms in that Roman concrete were forged in ancient stars billions of years ago. The calcium, the silicon, the aluminum, they are cosmic leftovers. Stardust rearranged into volcanic rock, ground into ash, mixed with water poured into wooden forms by human hands. Now they sit in a dome eye. And Rome, still rearranging themselves. The universe is not a collection of objects. It's a collection of stories unfolding at different speeds. A mayfly lives for a day. A human lives for decades. A concrete dome evolves for millennia. A mountain range shifts over millions of years. A star burns for billions. Same physics, different tempo. When you truly grasp that, Something shifts in your mind. You stop seeing the world as static furniture and start seeing it as choreography. Everything is in motion. Some of it just moves very, very slowly. Now imagine standing inside the Pantheon. Light pours through the oculus at the top. You feel the coolness of stone. Tourists whisper, cameras click. Above you, that massive dome, built around 126 AD, still contains regions where chemical reactions have not completely finished. Not because they were poorly made, but because nature doesn't rush perfection. 2,000 years is not enough to exhaust the possibilities of atomic rearrangement under the right conditions. And that, to me, is thrilling. Because it means the ordinary is extraordinary. The sidewalk outside your house is a slow experiment in chemistry. The bridge you cross every day is aging, yes, but also transforming. We talk about solid ground as a metaphor for certainty. But even solid ground is in flux. Does that make you uneasy, or does it make you faff? Eel connected. For me, it does both. There's a humility in realizing that our creations participate in processes far longer than our lifetimes. We are temporary conductors in an orchestra that keeps playing after we leave the stage. The Romans are gone, their language evolved, their empire dissolved, but their concrete continues its quiet symphony. And maybe that's the most beautiful part. We often chase immortality in grand gestures, monuments, names carved in stone. But true endurance might lie in understanding processes, not products. Feynman used to say that understanding something deeply makes it more beautiful, not less. Knowing that concrete is still hardening after 2,000 years doesn't make it less magical. It makes it more so. Because now when you see a gray slab, you don't see dead matter. You see time captured. You see atoms still negotiating their positions. You see a story that started with a volcano, passed through human hands, and continues long after the builders turned to dust. And here is the question I want to leave you with. If something as plain and unremarkable as concrete can hide such a slow, patient miracle, what else are we overlooking? What other finished things are still becoming? What if your failures are still curing? What if your ideas are still reacting with new experiences, slowly crystallizing into something stronger? What if cracks in your life are not just weaknesses but entry points for growth? Nature rarely shouts its secrets. It whispers them in gray stone. It whispers them in the fact that 2,000 years is not the end of a process. It whispers that time is not only a destroyer. It is also a builder. And if we listen carefully, really carefully, we might begin to build our own lives the way the Romans built their harbors. With ingredients chosen wisely, with patience, with respect for time, and with the quiet confidence that the most important changes happen slowly and visibly, long after the crowd has gone home. Concrete is still hardening. After empires, after wars, after generations. Maybe the universe is telling us something about endurance. Maybe it's telling us that strength is not a moment, it's a process. And that process never really ends.